Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, and I want to wish you a wonderful Coronation Saturday. Today is the 6th of May 2023. I would say a wonderful Coronation Saturday. And welcome to Talk and Sip, and I want to wish you all the best. And my throat is just going dry, so I'm just going to go straight for a drink and have some water. Well, it's a great Saturday, ladies and gentlemen, and tonight's show is really about the king and the coronation. Really, the coronation and Republic of Jamaica. Talk and Sip. Republic and Jamaica. Talk and Sip. And I want to say those words because I believe that the level of discussion tonight could and somehow generate a sort of, the monarch, Republic, Jamaica, leadership, and all these different aspects of things. And I want to invite you to also join in. And if you want to join in and also to be, what should I say, on the guest and to come into the show and to talk, you can also do that. So I'm going to put that link right there as well. Let me put that link. And there's a link where you can actually join in. Let me see. Here we are. Hey, Sean, how are you doing, buddy? There's a link. Oh, the link has gone up so many times there. Yeah. Okay, good. So it's a beautiful Saturday night. O'Neill, hey, how you doing, buddy?
What's going on, Mr. Fidel? How are you doing?
No, you need to say His Royal Highness, you know what I'm saying?
His Royal Highness. Well, we should say, hear he. We have a new king.
Hear he. Heary, the new king, or so like that.
You know, we should have a horse that goes to each of the parish in Jamaica and stop in the center of town and say, hear he, proclamation from the new king."
Are you being facetious?
Well, so
You're-
back in the day, I'm trying to be historical here, because back in the day when you have the crown and the new king, you got to
you're-
announce it to all the all the citizens.
you're right about that, because when the baby was born, or well, anytime something big happens or so, there's a town crier.
Mhm.
The town crier that shouts out "Heary."
Exactly.
Even when when the late queen passed away,
Yeah.
that person also shout out there as well. And I do wonder what happened in Jamaica at that time, O'Neill. You know,
That's a good question. I actually was trying to
Yeah.
find, because the last was 19 when the queen was
Queen Elizabeth.
what, 1937, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know what was sort of the ceremonial in the various, monarch extension outside of the UK. That's an interesting thing to find out,
Yeah.
to see what actually took place back then.
And it was what 19 on 6th of February 1952, though. That's when he died. Coronation of Queen Elizabeth when took place on the 2nd of June 1953, Westminster Abbey.
Yeah. So 37 was her father, right?
Yeah.
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 Be interesting to find out that what happened in the colonies back then, when you had a new king.
One of the things that I wanted to do, and I'm sure somebody's gonna do that. That while the coronation is going on with the timing, if there's gonna be like another video showing Buckingham Palace, sorry, when Queen Elizabeth was also being coronated, to see if the timing would have been at the same way.
Right.
Because, sorry, go on. Yeah.
No. Go ahead.
Yeah, because the Brits are so meticulous with timing.
Mhm.
Even when the Queen died, meticulous with timing. Because my wife and I were watching it and we were saying, "Wow, it's coming on to 11 o'clock. It's coming on to 11 o'clock."
Mhm.
And then 11 o'clock, there he was, boom, at the gate there.
Yeah.
And they're very meticulous with time, and always put on a fantastic. I'm sure. But anyway, how are you doing anyhow? What are you drinking? Are we gonna drink some for the king?
No, I am drinking, and I am sure that you mean the king.
Yes.
You can't mix it up. It's now the king. I know you've been used to the queen for 70 years, but it's now
Yes.
the king.
Did I say the queen? Did I say the queen?
You said the queen.
Oh wow, yeah, the queen. Yeah, I'm just stone throw away from her. Yeah, what
Or
are you gonna?
you might be saying maybe it's the queen is the one that has all the power now. It's the Queen Camilla.
Oh, the funny thing about Queen Camilla, which is she's now called, and there is a there's there are people who are still fans of Lady Diana, Princess Diana, and they still have this issue against
Mm-hmm.
Camilla. But one thing about Camilla, though, you never heard anything when she was seeing Charles. She was like seeing him from long time. She was like the perfect side chick, if anything like that. I don't know if that's the best way to say it. But she didn't embarrass him. She was there right through the time.
You could tell she's a pretty private person.
Yes.
Yeah, you could tell that. But I think it's one of those, once in a lifetime for a lot of folks. I think you and I hopefully will live to see William, because King Charles is what, 72?
Yeah, he's a good age. He's a good age.
Yeah, but I don't think he aged well like his mother.
Yes.
His mother aged very well. I don't think he aged very well like his mother. So I believe in our lifetime we probably see Prince
Queen.
Williams become.
Yeah. Coronation of King Charles. Charles didn't say his age.
I think he's
Age.
72 or 76. I don't remember.
Yeah. Yeah. The bit about it is that she stood her ground and 73,
Hmm.
oldest person in British history to become a king. So
That's
therefore, give him another 15, 20, another
no, I would say
10 years.
probably another 10 years.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't, I don't believe he has aged like his mother.
Yes.
If you sort of look at his mother at 73 and sort of look at him, his
Yes.
mother obviously aged a little bit different, perhaps different lifestyle.
Mm.
And so I think we'll see William at some point in time. And the
Yes.
question becomes, will he at some point in time, not like his mother, would turn over the crown to William? Because
To
William is
William.
45, 44.
Wow. It's getting
So
there.
maybe when William is about 55, he'll turn it over because then he would be almost 90 years old.
Uh, 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 uh.
It's going to be an
Anyway,
interesting.
I've got someone Mark Taylor is always he's having an Earl Grey tea hot. Um a great tea hot and somebody earlier today before they even came on the show, before the show even started, they said they were having what do you call it? Stone ginger wine on the rocks. I guess Laurel McLeish, maybe she's having it because of King Charles. You were saying something about what you're gonna have, Anil.
I'm having a sparkling apple cider vinegar beverage. Very healthy.
Sparkling, sparkling apple cider.
Yeah.
Well, for the king, um, I'll have a glass of wine for the king.
So the interesting thing, I have and I won it in an auction years ago. I have a 1960 gin
Yeah.
called the Queen's Collection that I won at the auction that I have downstairs, and I'm like, maybe I should open it and cheers to the king.
Mm.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, you should do that. Cheers to the king, and even invite him over to have a drink with you.
I know. But it's interesting, right? It's like it's a pretty historic day, and
Uh-huh.
obviously you have different perspectives around the love of the monarchy. Some people leave in the monarchy, but I could tell you, just looking at the crowd on the television, the British people turned out. Obviously, just like in any engagement or public affairs and coronation such as this, you will have detractors. There was a couple people who said, "Not my king." So you're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah,
So
yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. So a few people are saying that, but it's a very minute set of
yes,
persons.
exactly.
Really minute. But what's your okay? Since we're talking about the coronation as well of King Charles, I don't know if you watch it. What was your take on it? And ladies and gentlemen, Neb Gorse, on 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 Instagram. I'm not going to stay too long on the Instagram side there. Uh, but what was your take?
I loved it.
What-
I took in the obviously. I wish there was a explanation of all the different ceremonial symbolism, etc. But one of the thing that I forgot the lady. She's part of the. She's like similar to the Masters of Arms here, or
Hmm.
I forgot Sergeant at Arms. I think similar. She was a lady that was carrying the sword. That
Oh, that's Penny Mordaunt. She's the
yes,
conservative. Oh yeah,
right.
she
But
yeah.
that was the first time a woman
A woman,
that had
yes,
that
yes.
role. So I think that's pretty historic. So that was pretty cool. Um, and I was reading an article. I think it was Economist, and it says
Mm.
the guy put on a hat. It's a really pretty big hat. And as they were putting the hat, I'm like, once that hat got on his head, hopefully at some point in
Are,
time,
are you
someone
talking
else,
King Charles?
yes,
You mean the crown?
the crown.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah.
the article said the man with the hat on his head, and I think they were playing off words. But
Yeah.
I do believe if any journalists get to interview him after this, I think they will ask him the question around, once that crown touched your head, what was the feeling, right? Walk the public through sort of that thinking, and what does that mean for you, right? And it is the same thing for the British people in the Commonwealth. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion about moving away from the monarchy, but I think one has to say it's a historic day. I wish, obviously, in the days after, there might be historians that walk you
Mm.
through each of the different segments. But to your point, everything was by design, right?
Yes.
The ceremonial aspect of it. Um, and I think if you're a historian buff, this is something pretty historical, if you will, to witness and be able to say, you saw sort of the
Mm.
coronation of the first king in your lifetime.
I just saw a message from Graham Wilson, and he said there it wasn't a couple people, it was a substantial amount of people who were saying, "Not my king." And I think I got something here. Um, but actually, there. Thanks for that, Graham. Actually, someone was saying that this always happens at every coronation.
Yes, that's the thing with, right. You never have 100%. I think back in 1980,
Yeah.
if I recall correctly, an article that I read was 18% back in 1980 want to move away from the monarchy, and that number has since grown. So
Mm.
what that just says, there's always been people against the monarchy, and you and I have talked, and if you ask the man on the street sort of what the monarchy means to him or her, it'd be interesting the responses that you get. But I also think if you just look at it from an economic impact, the amount of tourism that is drawn to Buckingham Palace, etc., on a yearly basis, it's a massive economic impact.
Yes.
And you cannot deny that impact. So the question becomes, there's sort of a symbiotic relationship between the public and the monarchy, because the monarchy
Mm.
is bringing in a revenue, and there's some amount of tolerance. And you also have to give the monarchy credit; they do work hard. The working monarchies, whether it's Princess Anne, they're always in different places, whether it's charity events, etc. So you got to give them credit, right? Regardless of how you feel about the historical things that happened. And I think it was the prime minister said, you can't sort of litigate
Mm.
what took place years ago, right? We can only learn from it and figure it out. And the question is how much energy you want to
You know,
spend on.
I was at Boris Johnson was when he was in the mayor. I can't remember if he was mayor or what. And there was a thing in Lewisham where he was supposed to be like a mayor's town hall or whatever like that. He was a mayor of London, and there were some serious hecklers there, man.
Mhm.
O'Neill, I felt like I was living in England in the 1600s. The guys them were saying, "Off with his head, off with his head." Some serious English guys, off with his head. And it was really amazing. And you'll always have hecklers. And I'm just noting, I got to bring in Graham Wilson. The Stone of Destiny sat under the throne. You agree with Alex Salmon on this occasion. Scotland should have said no. It would have created an interesting discussion. Recent polls are suggesting that people are under 50 are not supportive. You know, I, I don't know. I don't know. Personally speaking, I enjoyed watching it today as well.
No.
I don't know if I'm a royalist or what, but I did enjoy sitting down and watching it. I enjoyed watching Princess Diana's wedding, Kate's wedding, um, Harry's wedding, and there's just something about the pumped and the I don't know. I know there's history, but in
Mhm.
a way, I don't know, traditions and history. It is so important that even these statues, which people want to tear down and everything. I'm of this view. Leave the statue and just say that is Rhodes. He was X Y Z. You know, it's like trying to change the course of history by somehow trying to get these things out of your eye gate so you don't remember really. But does it change anything unless you're really educated as to what it is about? And there will always be. I mean, I've seen some comments like from Jamaica to say the Baroness Amos who read something. Uh, um, Hudson Wilkins, she's a Christian lady, and Baroness Scotland. They call them traitors. These are the black ladies who are involved. They call them traitors, and I'm saying, come on, give me a break.
Yeah. It's always interesting when you just think of the discussions that comes about as a result of these events where you have different perspective around the monarchy, and you see different comments from around the world. And you just mentioned what came out of Jamaica, and I would say that there's a lot of folks that says, the folks who look different,
Mm,
they're a seller. But I don't see it as that. And actually, I saw I think it was on the royal website
mm,
that they were showing sort of the different dignitaries and the different profiles of people. And one got to say, there's a large cross section of people from different backgrounds, right? There's a scene that I saw, and you could tell it's a real scene where I don't know the gentleman, the black gentleman, and this white lady, and she saw him and just ran in the biggest hug. And
yes.
you could tell that's a real. So seeing stuff like that, a moment like
Mm,
that, you
mm.
realize that it's an evolution. Because I'm sure if you went back to the coronation of the queen and before, you probably see nobody look like you and I. And the
Definitely.
fact that I believe, and someone could correct me, I believe Charles' secretary for about 5 years was a Jamaican woman.
Mm,
Right. So there's an evolution, and obviously you can't change history, and you can't change also the family that you're born. We didn't pick the family that we're born into, right?
yeah.
And you have Charles, who is born in privilege. You have Harry, you have Williams, right? You can't pick. And the question is that, what does Charles do from now, going forward? Now he's king,
Yeah.
and right, how he's gonna govern. Not govern is the wrong word, but how he's gonna put himself out there, because his mother was a common force. You
Yes.
remember during COVID, everybody want to hear from the queen, right?
Yes.
Does he become that unifier? And I think the question becomes, and he might say it differently, what is Charles' legacy? Obviously, the Queen has a legacy. What is
Mm.
what is Charles' legacy? And I think that's going to be important.
I
As
think I think one of the legacy that many are talking about, and when you see the diverse persons who are there, they ask them the question, what was the basis of your invitation? The Prince's Trust, which he started, I think it was 1970 something or so. I don't remember the
Mhm.
exact years. That is something which has helped so many people,
Black and brown
and
people.
Brown as well, the
Yeah.
Prince's Trust. And they sometimes say he put his foot in. Well, he didn't put his foot in as much as his father, the Duke
Mhm.
of Edinburgh. And I think they're saying that Prince William, it is hoped that he'll be a bit more they might bridge the gap where he speaks out a bit more, because it's a ceremonial role that he has.
Mhm.
And that brings a big debate about even Jamaica and the whole republic debate, because the ceremonial role or the ceremonial head is just that, ceremonial. He can say some things, but they try not to say certain things that affect Rishi Sunak, because anything, if he's going to give a speech at the opening of Parliament, it is going to be a speech which is drafted by the government for him to read, and he's going to say, "My government." If Rishi Sunak or whatever goes to him to become the prime minister, we're all going to see that, because we're all going to know that the Conservative got the most seats. We're all going to know that Labour got the most seats. Says Keir Starmer may be the next person that he appoints to be the prime minister. Well, should I say? Actually, let me see. Did Rishi Sunak goes to him? Yes. Did Rishi
Yes,
Sunak go? Rishi
I,
Sunak went to him, and let's just
yes.
went
Liz
to the
Truss
Queen,
went to
the
the
Queen
Queen, and
before
then
she died.
Richard
Yes,
Connor went to Charles.
Charles. So
Yeah.
therefore, the second person for Charles could be Rishi again, or it is looking more likely to be Keir Starmer based on the results of the local government elections
Mhm.
just a couple of days ago on the 4th.
Right.
Um, so that's it. But what's her name? The minister mother who fought. She was on Sky, and what she said is that the the ascension of King Charles to the crown has spurred on the whole debate for Jamaica to move forward to become a republic. It has spurred on, and it came across like there was this haste, and she's coming across with this haste. But the more I look at it, the more I'm saying slow down on this whole thing, as our discussion last week. You know.
It was an interesting comment that she made, and obviously, when you the clip,
Mm,
I don't know how long the interview was, and the clip
yeah.
was. I couldn't find a full interview, so I could see context in terms of the build up to that question.
Mm,
But there's a couple of things that was interesting in what she said. One, they're looking to next year or the latest 2025 to do a referendum,
yes.
and there was already recommendation that Jamaica is going to go the republic route.
Mm,
And she talked about there are 13 things that needs to change to move away from the king. But then she said something that was pretty interesting. Was she said, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me, is Jamaica, it's time for Jamaica to be off Jamaica, which I'm not sure I understand that statement and what she meant, because one could say, to the point that you made before,
yeah.
the governor general is a representative of the queen and now the king.
Yes.
It's always a ceremonial role in Jamaica.
Yeah.
So is yes, there's a constitution that was drafted, when we became independent in 1992. But when she said that, if I just look at it, one interpretation could be we have to move away from the monarch for Jamaica to be Jamaicans. And I just didn't get that bit. And that's why I said I didn't see the full interview to understand the context of that comment. But that
Yes.
was a couple of things that caught me off guard was, all the statement. But then I went back um, and looked at the 13 things that she talked about. So apparently, they are very prescriptive things that
Mm,
needs to happen to move away from the monarchy, include public education, town halls, etc., etc. And if you need to get 2/3 of the vote, so you have to get people to be added to the voters registration, because
mm.
I think you mentioned the last time there was about 1.9 million people on that registration. So
On the
how
registration. Yeah.
right? So how do you get more folks, and then how do you get the 2/3? Because the interesting thing on that Sky News bit, they also did some man in the street in Jamaica. And I don't know if it was a selection, but the
I
three
remember. Yeah.
person who, one guy said, he wants to stick with the evil he
Stick,
knows.
stick to the evil that he knows.
Yeah. Another guy says, I don't know, how does this impact the price of bread?
Yeah.
Right. And another person say, I think it was a guy who was a Rastafarian says,
Mm,
Rastafarian likes the king. So it's an interesting dynamics that you have three people, and obviously they didn't showcase any person that says otherwise, but it just tells you that there's a cohort and a certain part of the Jamaican public that actually likes the king. So the question becomes on that bit around the price of bread, you're going to have to sell. Why should I care? And I think that's the important piece we talked about to the lady from the advocacy group last week. So I don't think it's a done deal because you need to get 2/3.
Yes, yes. And the interesting thing about it is that when I listen to that conversation also with the different person, the different vox pop of that same interview, um, it is like people also recognize that something must happen, but they're not too sure, and they are more saying, I mean, on my TikTok, I met a few people on TikTok there. There's like 20,000 people, 23,000 people who actually watch that video, and 10,000 watch another one, and people are still commenting.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm getting from lots of people is that while at the same time they would like the government to become the Jamaica to become the head of state and to do away with the king as the head of state, people are actually saying we want to know more. And that same question always comes up again: the price of bread, and I always say that it won't affect the price of bread right away. It won't affect crime right away,
Mm-hmm.
but is a sense of, I don't know what it is. It's a sense of belonging, a sense of having get. As some would say, get rid of the white man, get rid of the colonial masters, get rid of the former slave traders, or so. So many people have their different reason, but one thing which is very clear is that people definitely want to know more. And Graham Wilson actually is saying, I spoke with someone in a week who was in Jamaica for some years in a law enforcement role. Evidently, the last thing to say to Malahu is, "This is how we do it in the UK." Um, um, what do you understand by that, Mark? Graham,
I spoke with
Onion?
someone. I'm trying, Lolly.
Yeah, I think maybe they say. I mean,
This is how we do it in the UK. I'm not sure I understand that bit.
yeah.
Um,
I guess maybe it's Malahu Ford is not keen or so. Graham, if you can break that down a bit more.
yeah.
Mark Taylor said what they're proposing is a titular head in the president and exercising removing the king for the sake of removing the king.
Yeah, it's just it's what Barbados has done, right? So you have Barbados. I think Barbados, Trinidad. There's a couple other Caribbean countries that are republic, right?
Yeah.
They have a ceremonial president. So I think the question becomes, and it seems that's the easy path, and that's what they're going to take. Is a very symbolic removal, and they're going to have a ceremonial president. And if it's like Barbados, where the governor general who was there became the president, right? So nothing changed, and I think that's where the man on the street, is wondering what changed, right? There was a discussion around constitutional reform, but in that bit with the Sky News, that didn't come up. But as I said, there's only 3 minutes video. But it seems to me there's no discussion around constitutional reform that started a couple of months ago. So either they're tabling that for some other time and just focus on this symbolic view. It's interesting. There was also, I heard, and I didn't see the letter. There was a letter, and Jamaica is one of the signatory of the letter that got sent to King Charles around repatriation and reparation, and also what else they asked for? Something around I'm trying to remember what, but it was repatriation and something else they asked him to address. I just don't know. It's going to be an interesting to see how it plays out in Jamaica in terms of the reform and the moving away from the monarchy. It's going to be interesting to see how King Charles
Yeah.
Now he's the king. Well, he's been official the king since his mother, but now it's official. What is he gonna? What his legacy is gonna be, right?
Yeah. Let me, yeah, yeah. Let me just say hi. Hi, Michelle. Welcome, and thank you for coming on. And ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to share your views. Those on Instagram and those even on TikTok. If you want those on TikTok, you can come over to YouTube. You can watch us directly. Oni, Michelle is asking a question. Oni, what do you mean by the men on the street?
Well, the men and women in the street, I should say.
Yeah.
What I meant, Michelle, there was a Sky News
Oh, that's what you're referring to.
hit,
Okay.
and as part of the reporting of their interview with Malalu Foot, they also showed, I think, 3 or 4 people downtown Kingston, and they asked them their views about moving away from the king. And so that's what I meant by that, Michelle. They interviewed a couple of people down in downtown Kingston around their thoughts around moving away from the king.
Mm. And Graham Wilson came back to sort of clarify that point. Malahu has a strong view that the answers for a better Jamaica lie on the island. Whilst I understand that perspective, however, learning from other jurisdictions is important.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's a great. And you and I have chatted about this, and I think we touched on it. Where
Yeah.
if you look at South Africa, right, coming out of apartheid, they redid their constitution, and it's one of the blueprint that a lot of countries have used, because the way they went about it, where they went to every corner and made sure every views was heard, and they take all of that into consideration in putting together the constitution. But I think that's a great point, and we touched on it the last time. Is what is the haste, right? What is it that
haste make waste, they say.
right? But the piece that I and maybe I don't understand, and it could be me, is that if this doesn't happen 24, 25, what is the impact of the Jamaican people? And also, what is it that the king, the representation of the governor general, in that ceremonial role today, what is it that the Jamaican government cannot do? That's the piece that when the statement around Jamaica, the answer lies in Jamaica, for example, that he's just put up. What does that mean? Right? Are you saying that having the king somehow is causing certain
it's suffocating the country?
That's the piece I just don't. And maybe someone has a better answer, but it's something that I have thought about, where I'm like, what does it mean? And if you don't do it, right, what does it mean? Right? Yeah. So if we stay the status quo, what's the impact to the people?
Yes.
And if we change it, what's the impact to the people?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining us on Talk and Sip Saturday night. And the topic is the King Coronation and the Republic of Jamaica. The King was coronated today, his coronation. They strip him and they put on other clothes on him as well. It was a fanfare event. And I'd like to hear what people think also about, we're going to come on to that, about the gospel choir, which was there. And those on Instagram and Facebook, please comment. Anyone want to come into the show, just there's a link which was shown, and you can come in and share your piece and just let us know as well. And we're gonna at some point touch on a minister who was having a altercation verbally with another person. We're gonna look at some leadership factor as well. But one of the things that I was looking at, and following from last week, because instead of having these shows and it just ends, and I believe because the Republic discussion is something which is continuing, and right now there's something which is happening in Jamaica, and it was done by Rosemary Binder was there. Philly Jamaica, Philly Republic, that's going on presently right now at St. Michael's College, across from the UA, May the 6th, same time as us. I was asking this question, that now that the consultation is taking on, and anybody can come and answer this as well. Now that the consultation is happening, how is it going to be measured? Is it that people are going to, Malahu Ford was saying, I've had so much Zoom call late in the night. Listen, man, everybody talking about it. We are talking to people. How is it measured? How would it come together? In Jamaica, for argument's sake, there are 14 parishes. Is it that there's going to be some sort of voting or some sort of mechanism whereby, okay, Sentan is actually leaning towards a ceremonial president. Kingston is leading towards executive president. Um, St. Thomas is really strong on going to constitution. Well, actually, the constitution is not needed for this, but they want the CCJ. Another parish is saying they want the Privy Council to remain. How are these things going to be quantified when it comes on to these surveys and the discussion by the 14? What do you think about that from a meticulous point of view?
So that's the sort of complication you just brought up there, Silborn. So to me, from my view, the referendum and the outcome of the referendum would be your measurement, right? Because you have this working group that is made up of all these different scholars and different representation. And you're putting forth recommendation that based on sort of the 13 points that they have to sort of follow in educating the people, having town halls, Zooms, etc., is whether you convince enough of the Jamaican citizen that the change is warranted and what is the benefit to them. And then, if you go out and do your referendum and you don't get 2/3, it just means that the Jamaican people want to stay status quo, right? But then you also brings up the other complication around the Privy Council, right? What is the mechanism that you would need to remove the Privy Council, for example, and use the CCJ? Is that a parliamentary vote to do that? And how do you bring that into the conversation about moving away from the monarchy? Because I think you complicate a lot of different conversation if you try to get everything at once, right? So I think the measurement would be whether you convince enough Jamaicans that this is the path forward because it means this to them. So it's going to be interesting, the process that's taking place.
Well, Malahu Ford did mention a good point, and at some point I'm going to try to see if I can have a sit down with her, right here. She did mention a key point that we cannot do everything at the same time, which I do agree. We can't do everything at the same time, and therefore you need to do one stick phase by phase, because you can't just mash up everything right away. That's a term which she used. We can't just mash up everything right away. So, but what is and I think one of the things that Female Jamaican Advocate Network is also talking about, because there's so many groups. There's another group which I was joined in recently talking about as well. But Anil, I think the point is, how is it measured? Because the last communication I got to understand is that the 14 has recommended that Jamaica go forth with a ceremonial president. I don't know if that still stands after they have these consultations.
It seems, just hearing the interview with the Sky News, it seems, if you sort of listen keenly, that's the recommendation that they're going forward with, is that it will be a ceremonial president. Because I think when I dug a little bit deeper, Silborn, is that if you want something more than just a ceremonial president, it's going to take much more in terms of redoing the Constitution. And to your point, I don't think you could do everything at once. And the other question also to ask, and this is sort of more of a political one, because if you remember the current prime minister years ago, when he was campaigning, one of his campaign promises was to move away from the monarchy. So the question, if I was an astute journalist, I would ask, is this fulfilling a campaign promise? And you're taking the easiest path. Is that the case?
Yeah. I think Portia also said it as well. She wants to be the queen of Jamaica.
No, Portia said it. Patterson says it. I think every Jamaican prime minister, I think Golden said it. I think every prime minister has talked about, moving away from the monarchy. But the question is, the amount of energy you want to put into that, right? Because it takes away from, or it detracts from the other things, right? I just heard the prime minister was sort of given a state of Jamaica sort of speech, and he talked about for the first time
at last.
For the first time.
Sorry, that was a Michael Manley line.
Yeah,
for the first time at last. Sorry.
No, he said for the first time in decades, the debt to GDP has dropped below 70%, and he believed it could get to 60% at some point in time, which arguable would be astounding success if you could get GDP down that much, right? So I think in all of this, obviously, there's always political calculations.
I'm going to keep bringing in different persons, as Graham Wilson mentioned something: how to reach a much broad base of Jamaica citizens. Do people in Crossroads or Mountain View really care, apart from emotively?
Yeah, and so Grime actually a great point, because if you saw, just dissect the comments from the interview from the folks in downtown Kingston, it's do I even care?
Yes.
Right. Do I even care? So the question becomes, who are the 2/3 that's going to vote the referendum, right? Because if you go out of, it's just like if you stay in Washington D.C., for example, you stay in this bubble and you think everything is all about politics, all about policy, etc. But then if you go into the midst of the country, nobody cares. So the question becomes, when you go into Montego Bay proper, when you go into Mandeville, when you go into the great, parish of Clarendon, what people are going to say. I'm sure the Ocha people, they're probably going to stay with the monarch because they love the monarch. Ocha people are going to go with the monarchy. But everybody else, it's an interesting thing. It's like, I don't know, Silburn. It will be interesting to see what the engagement of the people look like and their responses. And I'm sure as part of this process, what they call that pollster, Don Nelson, is going to do a sample polling, because I'm sure the government is going to poll, they're going to poll the populace before they put a referendum out there.
And before I go on to same guy in Toronto and to Michelle Clark, I just go into bit by bit, and even going to the whole bit about the voting. And I like to bring this up because it's always good to play with figures and deal with these things. And when I looked at the persons who voted at the last election, and you can see there, and I can't even read it properly, but let me just, if can you see it? Yes.
My eyes are grown, so I can't.
Your eyes are okay. What it shows here, and I'm looking at the figures here. Okay, let's go first. 724,000 people voted for at the last election.
Out of what? 1.9.
Out of 1.913, 1,913.
Does it have a breakdown by age group?
Well, it has some other breakdown, but I'm looking at the summary here. 408,000 voted for the JLP, 306,000 voted for the PNP, and the population, I understand, of Jamaica at that time
2.9.
2.9. You said?
Yeah, 2.9.
Wow, I'm hearing 2.8.
2.8
or 2.28 or so. I could be wrong, But the key thing. Let me just stop sharing this. The key thing is, how will those people be mobilized to register? And as what Graham said, will that put money in their belly? Food in their belly. I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well, I think there's another section of that data to look at. Is out of that, almost 800,000 people that voted in totality, what's the age breakdown? Right? Because that's a telltale, right? Because the question becomes, is this going to mobilize the youth as we had last week to be able to want their voice to be heard, right?
Yes.
And then, or you're going to mobilize the same constituency that typically vote on a normal election day. So that's the question becomes, you know, is this your normal election cycle? Which I
Yes.
would opine that it's not. It's more around something that's going to impact the country. So I would think, and I think this is what the advocacy groups are doing, you mobilize the young people who A, want to register because they want a voice, and B, I think if you see more young people mobilize, I think you'll get to the two-third because there's no emotional connection to the
Yes.
monarchy. I do believe if you poll people and you look at it by age group, there's more people who are in the older demographic that are probably much more allegiant to the monarchy or
Mm.
affinity than say the younger generation.
Yes, yes, that's interesting. I haven't seen that. I'm going to try to see a breakdown of that there, of the 1.9, and to see one have to deal with it as to say where is that the brunt. What will be so interesting is, and I have to look at another time, and I send you the figures. Where's the brunt of that 408,000 people came from? Where's the brunt of that 306 people that voted for the PNP came from, as well? Michelle Clark, no one has actually put everything that needs to be done on a Gantt chart. If they did, they would quickly realize that reorganizing the entire government structure is not till 2025.
Well, I don't think they're doing that. So there is an article, I think, in the New York Times that I read,
Mm.
or the Economist. I don't remember where it is. And it talks about 13 or 12 actions that they're going to go through. And none of it is around the reorganization of the government.
Mm.
I think they're just going to, based on this bit, is it's a ceremonial. They're going to just replace the governor general with a president.
Barbados. That's going to follow Barbados.
They're just going to follow the
Best
Barbados model,
practice.
and they're going to put off, to Malahoo Foot is like you can't do everything at once. It's sort of a phase, and I think phase one is removing the monarch. And I think based on what I saw in that article, I don't know if the article is true, but there were 13 things that was outlined as part of the working group that needs to
Yeah,
get.
yeah, that's interesting there. Uh, sorry, Grandma said, do the view different between JLP Heartlands or Uptown Kingston and PNP Strongholds? Well, that is something to look at as well, because I think the PNP are now leaning towards, or they were an advocate of executive president, and it seemed to me like the Labour Party is more leaning towards a ceremonial. I think the Labour Party is also leaning towards keeping the Privy Council. I don't know what the PNP is actually saying. I believe both of them are leaning towards keeping the Privy Council. Herbert Musher said, I do not think that the common person in Jamaica has enough information to express themselves at the poll if they should have won. They are too emotionally connected along party lines.
Yeah, and that's a great point in terms of, what are you going to vote on? Are you going to vote based on the fact that if, say, what you just mentioned around the PNP has one view, they want an executive
Yes.
president, and the current Labour Party want a ceremonial president. Do
Yes.
the PNP mobilize their supporters to vote no? And then the JLP mobilize their supporters to say yes, and then you have a split among party lines, and you don't get to the two-thirds. So the question becomes: is that the outcome that we eventually get? Given sort of, you'd have thought that there would have been an agreement between the opposition and the current administration that here's a path forward, but there seem to be diverging opinions. And if that continues, you could see where it becomes a typical election. The other thought too, Silbern, which is interesting, is, and I don't know, someone would have to educate me on it, is can you add it as a ballot item on a general election, right? So could you have, say, a general election and then you put this as a ballot item? For example, in California, when you have the elections, you could put these referendums on the ballots. Could you do the same thing? I don't know the answer. That'd be interesting because I could see if that's the case where the current administration would say just add it as a ballot item.
So, yeah, because I was thinking in a way, for the ballot, for argument's sake, this particular election or this referendum, you would have on it not just the ceremonial president, but you'll have ceremonial president, executive president, and you'll have also on it yes or no too. So therefore it's like you got some two-tier, like sometimes you got some elections like the mayoral elections, you got first choice, second choice, and then if you don't get a good one, it all comes together and then you do a second runoff. So therefore what you'll have is yes or no to a republic, to Jamaica leaving the monarch. Yes. What is your choice of the type of president, ceremonial or executive? But you think that's a risk?
But just let's break that down, right?
Yeah.
A ceremonial president is an easy pathway to get to, right? You just pretty much go the Barbados route. An executive president is what we have in the U.S. You have the executive president who control the cabinet branch. You have Congress and you have the judiciary. You have three separate branches of government.
Yes.
Right. So it seems to me you'd have to do a big transformation of how you govern today, which is totally separate. Right. So you'd have to redo all the laws, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, that's a very longer and very deliberate process because you're changing the governance of a country. And that could have significant implication if you don't put the proper governance and the proper checks and balances in place, right? Yeah. That's not a 1 year, thing. It's not a 2-year thing. It has to be very deliberate and it has to fit that it's the best thing for the people, not the best thing for a few, where you want the power of the executive president, right? I don't think Jamaica has the institutions to have an executive president. That's just my opinion. Others might have different opinions.
Really, you think so?
Yeah, I don't think Jamaica has because if you just take the U.S. for example, the U.S. we have the cabinet, we have where the executive branch. Right. There are certain things that, like, for example, in terms of, what they call budget or spend, Congress is the only one that could authorize spending, etc. You have the judiciary. Right. So you'd have to create 3 separate and figure out how to integrate that together. Yes. And that is a hard process to then say you're going to go from where we are in terms of governance to something else, where one could argue that the current structure that we have in place needs to be reformed. Right. Yeah. Not, as Malouf said, you can't tear down everything.
Yes. At the same time, let me bring you. Let's good evening. How are you doing, sir?
Good evening, honorable gentlemen.
What's going on, Mr. Jamaica?
Were you drinking something for the king? Were you with the king or something?
Yes, I'm actually drinking coffee.
I thought you would be drinking Crown Royal.
No, from the hills of Birmingham.
You're in Birmingham?
No.
No, he's saying he's drinking the king's coffee.
Okay, yes. For me, actually, the walk that I was doing with Matunda the other day, somebody messaged me and said something like, the Buckingham Palace walk. And I said, what are you talking about? I didn't pick it up. And they said, you're walking with your friend in the King's Manor in Buckingham Palace. I said, no. We were in Buckingham Place. he actually thought I was walking in the King's lawn, Listen, what's your take on
what I'm about to say may surprise a lot of people watching.
You love the king. I knew it. You were a royalist.
Yeah, man. Big up the king, man. Big up Kingy. Well, before that, Silver, did you see the football match? Was it the football match that the audience, the crowd was singing something towards the king?
You mean don't what are you trying to say? Don't you mean not my king? Is that it?
No, what he must do with the coronation.
Oh, I didn't miss. I missed that
I'll
one.
send it to you after the show. I'll send it to you after the show. It's very funny. Anyway, um,
Well,
I
it's,
agree.
well, I know some cops been going around saying the perfect side chick. Anyway, I won't diss anybody. This is a
No,
King's Day, you know.
please don't adorn Warmington's attitude, sir. That's unbecoming of you.
I don't know if I want to touch on that topic. Anyway, keep talking, Lester. Yeah.
But I agree totally with O'Neill. Also very strange coming to agree with O'Neill. But what what O'Neill said is very insightful because to me it's a waste of time to go ceremonial president because it won't change anything in Jamaica. Nothing will change, right? It's just that we no longer have a governor general. So we'll have a president and a prime minister, just like Trinidad. It makes no sense. If we're going to change, we're going to change. So we when I say we, I mean JLP, PMP, the country, the diaspora has to have the mindset that listen, this may take a 10-year change, right, O'Neill?
Mm-hmm.
It may take so it's going to be a process. In that process, this is where we're going to go. So there's a vision, there's a step, there's a start, there's a middle, there's an ending. It has to be that. Also, it's a very expensive. I thought O'Neill was going to go to that route. It's a very expensive transformation. Are we willing to spend that money? Not saying that we don't have the money, but are we willing to spend that money? Because Jamaica currently needs infrastructural upgrade.
Yeah.
Jamaica currently needs educational upgrade. There's so many other things that we can spend that same money on instead of changing the system of government. You know, I mean, I think it needs to change. I think we need to go where we directly elect the leader of the country. Is that the most pressing thing to do right now?
At this time.
At this time, you know, for me, I think for me, it's not worth it. It's foolishness for me. I think we should have a aim of better governance, have better selecting of the candidates. Even in 2023, how we're selecting candidates is still a tribal thing. It's still a
classic case is Portmore.
Portmore and St. Elizabeth, yes.
With that, what's his name again? Doctor something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and then guess what? The party leader, if you have a runoff and one person wins, and the party leader wanted to choose the loser, he can have an executive decision and override that runoff and choose the leader, which makes no sense of having a runoff in the first place if you can do that. You know, and I'm saying we need to fix how we are governed now in terms of our mindset towards governance. Because if you have an executive system with the same corrupt mindset, all we're going to have is a new corrupt system. That's all we're going to have. Because a lot of people are speaking as if changing the system of government will change Jamaica or change Jamaicans.
Yeah.
And it will not. We have to then say, okay, we're going to change the system of government, but we're also going to try to have a systematic mindset shift towards certain things. Like number one, and I think you gentlemen agree with this, schooling, education has to be mandatory. Has to be mandatory, right?
When you say schooling, you mean to say going to school? Period.
Going to school has to be by law. A child, you as a parent, guide, or whatever, you must see to it that your child goes to school, and by law you can get into trouble. Currently, that's not so in Jamaica. That's why people in Jamaica don't take
anything.
Yeah, but you must go to school.
Somebody just said on TikTok, not true. Many democracies have veto provisions.
No. But we are speaking specifically to Jamaica. You see, we can't compare no other jurisdiction. Jamaica is very unique in how we do things.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And this is why we have so many issues in our country, in our island, in our government. Because it is not, we have this Jamaican thing, boy. And we need to move past that Jamaican thing and have structures in place. So if O'Neill is out of the office, now listen, if O'Neill has a particular position and he's away on vacation, everything stopped because O'Neill up on vacation. This is
When
what is
really,
happening
when really the
in
civil servants or so should be carrying things going on.
exactly, and having a permanent secretary. How you have somebody who can't get fired,
Yeah.
regardless of what them do? You understand me? It's weird. So we have to fix our mindset towards governance,
So what?
towards the
So,
future
yeah.
and all of that.
So what you're saying then is that this whole process is not something, as the minister is saying, can be done quickly. It's going to be a long process. But also at the same time, O'Neill allude to the fact that a lot of things cannot be done at the same time, just like what Malahu is saying. But are you of the view then that in a make no sense you go for a ceremonial president? Period. In the first instance.
Makes no sense to go for that because all you're going to do
Yes.
is just swap black dog for monkey or monkey for black dog.
Yes. Well, somebody
And
just
other,
said a while ago, Graham Wilson made a point to ensure citizens understand the differences between models of presidency will take time if this is to be mean. What's your time frame? What's the time frame that you put? What's the time frame you put?
10 years.
Okay, O'Neill, go. And then let's go back. Yeah.
So I think the question becomes, in my mind, where you want to put your energy, right? So right now we have a constitutional monarchy, and the easiest path is a parliamentary republic, right? Where you have a ceremonial. The US have a presidential republic, right? And if you sort of look across, there's a mix of presidential republic. There's a mix. I think there's 15 countries that's ruled by monarchy, etc. Right? But I think you have to separate two things in my mind. The conversation around governance, it's a different conversation. Is how do you mature the governance process, right? And I think the prime minister said it too. It's like I recall when the prime minister was talking about road and infrastructure.
Yeah.
And he mentioned that the roads were created because they were pathways. It wasn't an engineering decisions, right? So now we're thinking about roads and infrastructure in a different way, right? So I think it's the same concept here is there are governance maturity issues that needs to happen in Jamaica, regardless, around how you select your member of parliaments, right? If you could fire a permanent secretary, for example, right? Those are separate things that under a parliamentary system, you could get there, but you have to put in the work, right? Because the same thing if you want to go to a presidential republic like the US, you currently do not have that infrastructure in place, right? And the question to your point, Lester, is do you want to go put the energy and money for the next 10 years when you have other things that are a priority in Jamaica, such as infrastructure, such as crime, such as jobs, et cetera, where do you put that priority, right?
Yeah.
And I think if I was any one of the leaders, to me, that priority would have been, priority 20 out of whatever, right? But I could focus on the whole issue of governance and maturing that model, right? And I think that's two different conversation, because I don't think the energy should be spent on this, because I think it's a very divisive issues. And I think you have a very political process. And I think this could break away Jamaica. You remember, Jamaica has been a very stable place. If a lot of people don't realize what's going on in Haiti. Yeah, Haiti is a failed republic right now, right? And if we're not mindful in terms of how we think about these things, we could get to where we have these tribalness where you never know, right? So to me, it's where you spend your energy.
O'Neill, we'll go back. O'Neill, I'm going to come back to you there on that point there. Who are you expecting, or how do you believe they are going to determine the ceremonial? And Malahu said something one time, politics can be divisive and the political aspect. So we need to get someone who is above politics. But what she failed to understand, well, she knows, is that everyone who is get appointed, governor general, whatever, is also appointed by a politician,
Mm-hmm.
a party or so. And the I'm concerned about the easy way out. In a sense, I believe very strongly that there need to be something substantial in the first instance, as a base that is between executive president or ceremonial president. Same guy in Toronto. I put it up there. Jamaicans want to hear about the economic pros and cons from the sessionist camp, especially. So far, there's between nil and none. And also, someone said earlier they need to know the difference between the ceremonial and the executive president. Lester.
Um, I agree with what O'Neill says. Um, I think that process, if we're going to go to the executive, it's going to take about 10 years or maybe more.
Why
You know,
10
because
years, Lester?
because the unwrangling of it's not easy to change the constitution as is, you know. It is.
Mm,
It's a lot of people think write a new one. It's not, you know.
mm.
And it's a very expensive process because let's take a name change of a ministry. So PMPD in a power and PMP have like say Minister of Local Government, right?
Mm,
JP coming up power of Minister of Local Government and Welfare or Youth Issues. Them
mm.
add on something to it. You see all the old paperheads that was there yesterday under PMP.
Yeah.
Them have got all of the paperhead now, letterheads, and new envelope, new stamp, new. It's just it's mind-boggling expensive
Me like
and
KC. But that's
unnecessary.
just for the lawyers, them KC instead of QC. But that's just for the lawyers.
So the unwrangling of the Westminster parliamentary system is a very difficult thing. But if we're not going to have a joint select committee where PMP and GLP, right, and stakeholders come together and have this reform, it makes no sense because you can't just have one side of people, which is the JLP, which is foolishness if that is the case. Foolishness. We have to have a joint select committee doing this thing and have the education because public education also is an expensive thing because as the guy from Canada said, what are the pros and cons economically, socially, and educate and everything? What are the pros and cons in this change? Because if the people don't know why we're having a change in terms of the system of government, it makes no sense because who are doing it for then? And from what I see, if we're to have the ceremonial presidents in the next 2 years, it will be the governor general will be the president.
So, okay. So look at it this way. What are then the positives of the ceremonial then in the short term? What would we say are the positives, the pros of the ceremonial?
So the thing, Silver, I don't look at it as a positive or negative.
Yeah.
I think a ceremonial is just a status quo. You're just getting it's no longer a governor general. It's called a president. That's all you're getting, right?
That's all.
And you don't have to go to the Queen when you say Leicester is going to be the next governor general or next president. You don't have to get a sign off from Charles.
That's a plus. That's a plus, isn't it?
Right. That's the only thing is that anything to do with changing in laws, etc. You don't have to get any signature, which I think that things, the governor general will do that on behalf of the whole process. But the thing that we have to think about in terms of where we are today, right, is you sort of have, which I don't know the answer but every time I look, it says that they're going the ceremonial path. That's what I've heard, and I don't know how true that is, right? But to your point around executive presidency, Silver, if you think of Jamaica 300 years as a colonial system, all the laws as a parliamentary system, then we became a
O'Neill, Lester, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear O'Neill. Maybe he's getting a call or something.
Yeah. Let me see.
Huh?
Yeah. How do you get back?
I don't know what happened. I just saw everything. King.
I think the king paid you.
I think King Charles just sent out and said, "Them boy there, someone needs to throttle the internet."
On my day.
My fight against me.
On my day. On my day.
No, I think as I was saying, Silver, it's just a hard process. You would have to rewrite every rules in terms of governance. You have to figure out what the separation of powers look like and mean, right? You would have to spend time really deliberately thinking through this. And I'm going to say this, and I hope I'm wrong. I don't think you have that type of brain power for folks to sit in a room in a select committee and come up with something that is in the interest of the Jamaican people. It will become political. It will become massive, divisive, right? And personal, right? So the question becomes, if you are a leader of either party and you're having a discussion at what's the Prime Minister house?
Royal.
You're having a discussion.
Leicester's house.
Yeah. Jamaica house. Well, it was
Jamaica.
But
You're having a discussion there. You have to go towards what's in the interest of the Jamaican people. And that is the agreement that you have to move forward with. And an executive president is just going to be divisive. It's going to be political. And you're going to take away the energy from all the other things that you need to do to support the Jamaican people. That's sort of my take on it.
Yeah, O'Neill, I agree with you. I don't know what's happening to me tonight.
We put stuff in your water, the king. We send the king. See, hear ye.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people understand what it is to be a Jamaican. You sum it up perfectly that who are you going to get in a room for the next even say 5 years? Say not 10 years, but 5 years, right? Remember, are you going to get all JLP pro lawyers or all PMP pro lawyers or all economists? Even just the fines of the court, how the judges are appointed. The Prime Minister of Jamaica constitutionally have more power than the United States president.
So do you think I'm gonna give that up, right?
Exactly. I've been seeing that. People don't understand that Andrew Seaga, 1983, when they had the snap election, Seaga could have made himself prime minister for life.
Because he had full control.
He could have done that. There was no Senate. I mean, there was no opposition Senate.
Yep.
Right? There was no opposition for the lower house. He had Pernell Charles acting as opposition leader. He appointed PMP people as senators, as PMP senators. He never had to do that. He could have had the whole parliament for himself. And he could have appointed himself PMP prime minister for life. That's how much power is vested in the hands of the Jamaican prime minister, the office of the Jamaican prime minister. It's just
and let's say that's the point there. I don't care if you're a Jamaica Labour Party prime minister or you're a PMP prime minister. If you take away those labor, the office of the prime minister, there's nobody that will give up that power.
Exactly.
The prime minister.
Exactly. But I don't think the common man, and when I say common, I mean the average Jamaican, even the diaspora, I don't think they understand the power. All right. It is ceremonial that Andrew have to write to, it is ceremonial that the Prime Minister has to write to the Governor General for a state of emergency. Because the Prime Minister already made a decision. This will happen.
Yes.
This will happen.
Governor General is just a formality.
It's just a formality. So
Because the Constitution says it. That's all.
So he doesn't really have to do it.
Yeah.
And the Governor General cannot object and say, no, you can't do it, because the Governor General has no political power.
There you go.
Yeah. So that means to say then. So what are we talking about then with this whole thing then? What are we talking about?
So if it's a ceremonial president, he still won't have any political power.
That's what I'm trying to say. So, getting rid of the king doesn't make any sense in that way.
No, it just to me, Silbron, it's a very symbolic thing. Is to say we are no longer governed by a monarchy. Yeah. We have our own system, and anything that
we don't have our own system. We still have the UK system.
Well, it's all ceremonial. Where
so we still have the same thing.
I don't need the Governor General that is tied to the monarchy of, if you hear some people will say, the colonial power that has slavery, etc., etc. We no longer have to go outside of the boundaries.
Will also Jamaica be a commonwealth? That's another question.
Yes, because Barbados is still a commonwealth.
Yes. And therefore they're still going to be going to the king.
Yes. There's benefits
that's why they still want to keep on to the Privy Council.
Yes.
So therefore, why leave Uncle Charles then? No drink with the king, Bridget.
Yeah. But because Uncle Charles never released Gaza, never released cartel. That's the problem.
Well, Isat. He's supposed to be in London.
Yeah. Isaac Buchanan. Yeah.
He's supposed to be in London. I was trying to reach out to him, but I think maybe I got the wrong links. To do an interview with him, because he's here with the Privy Council. And he said the Privy Council is great. He's an advocate of the Privy Council to keep the Privy Council. Because he said the CCJ. Many people, I hear people are saying that the Caribbean Court of Justice, they said it's like they all know each other and they can be corrupted. But in the UK, the judges know each other and the lawyers them, because they all come from the same chambers in a way.
Yeah, but they don't know you in the Caribbean.
Well, it doesn't matter. Law is law.
Yeah, but here's the thing: you have to have trust in institutions, right?
Yeah.
And I think what it is that we trust. Let's just be clear: we trust the Privy Council, who have sort of white men, white women, vices the CCJ, right? We trust. We don't. A lot of times we don't trust our own, and that's sort of some of the driving power. We trust that you're going to have someone who read the law and make a different decision, right? But I think we have to trust institution, whether it's CCG and, I would think, if we're an advocate, and I think Bruce Golden was an advocate of the CCG, if I recall, right? How do you strengthen the governance of the CCG to make sure it's working on behalf of the Caribbean people in a way that is fair, and what we call it, justice is blind? If we could get there, I think you probably will have more trust.
Yeah.
But
go on, let's go on.
As a prime minister, right? And this is just from my experience in politics over the years, right? If we have an executive type of government, remember, just like under Obama time, when he didn't have control over the House or the Senate, right?
Yeah.
No, he did. So in his first 2 or 3 years, he had a super majority in both.
Yeah. Okay, but for the rest of the other tenure, he didn't.
No, right? I think 3 years he had a super majority.
So just imagine, Silver. Just imagine the JLP in opposition and the PMP in power, but the JLP has and the PMP is the
president.
The president is a PMP.
Yes.
But the Senate and the lower house is controlled by the JLP, right? The PMP president will get nothing done. A peer executive order of got signed.
Well, it was just like what happened in I think Trump also had a difficulty, or was a difficulty.
Yeah, it's always typical where you use. It's the same thing with Biden and executive orders.
Yeah.
What is coming through here is exactly what some guy in Toronto says. And if anyone believes the person who benefit from the current structure are going to go quietly, as you say, Lester, then I have a bridge in Brooklyn and I want to sell it to you.
I have one in Virginia. I'll tell you. I'll even double the price.
You
Me
know?
want to Mandela Park, you know.
Well, with the two people, them. Well, you have a problem with the naked body.
No, but that's Emancipation Park.
Oh,
I
that's
can't touch.
Emancipation Park. Okay.
It-
But
it-
it
it-
is very clear. Go on it. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think if you saw go back, right, and I think the genesis of all of this is that, and maybe this is not a true statement, is that the Jamaican people or the man and woman on the street don't care enough to go dive deep into the subject matter and understand. And I think the policymakers have a vested interest to keep information very controlled. And I think the Prime Minister said it recently, that something to the fact that you will hear misinformation / disinformation. It's up to you to go research and read, right? Because to your point, and we're debating it, most people don't know the difference. Most people don't know what it takes to do one versus the other, right? And what's the pros and cons? That hasn't been articulated clearly in a communication in the town halls, etc.
Yes.
But O'Neill, the Jamaican people don't know the current system.
That's what I'm saying, right? Exactly.
Well, it seems now that before one can even go into what is going to be the executive or the constitution, they need to actually understand the power which is invested in the present system and the present government, isn't it, Lester?
Yes.
Yep.
A few knows it, but not so. So therefore, and that is why the man put him hand up and said, "Why am I not business about this, man?
Yeah.
Me just go about let them sort it out. Let those guys sort it out that we voted it."
I know the evil I know is the evil I want to keep, is what the man said.
But Silburn and O'Neill, you see, when I call Jamaica and I talk to several grassroots people, and me kind of fling little thing out there on them. For the majority of the people, they have no clue what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You have a lot of people who don't read newspapers, who don't watch news, they don't listen to the budget, they don't follow current affairs, right? Worse now, we have social media and people are taken up with the exploits of social media. They don't know. And if something is not directly affecting their life, their family, right, it is not important to them, because they're gonna say, and the same thing over, nothing not gonna change. Which a lot of times persons like you and I and O'Neill who is saying, well, this is not true. We have to have a vested interest. We have to push for change to come. These people are saying, hey, whether we vote or not, whether we partake or not, they must still do what they want to do. And we are saying, people like you and I know that that's not entirely true. We have to take a stand. So if we don't take a stand, then somebody's going to make a decision for us, because that decision has to be made anyway.
So therefore, now where we are at regarding this whole thing is that we're not ready. Can we agree on that point? Or as O'Neill would say, we're ready, but just go for the ceremonial. But after the ceremonial, when will this? Okay, I see the ceremonial, if anything, as okay, get rid of the king, and therefore that is cool. And then we go to the next phase of whether we want a ceremonial or an executive.
I don't think that will ever happen, Silver. I think the ceremonial, and then that's it. I think they'll improve some governance stuff. I don't believe, as I said, any one of those political leaders of either party,
yes,
they want to preserve the power of the prime minister office. Right?
Wow.
They don't want to elevate that into an executive president, because that brings its different challenges that they would have to face, which right now you don't have that within Jamaica. The prime minister has to go in and answer to parliament like you do in the UK. In a presidential system, I don't have to.
So that means, yes.
And that is why the UIC model is not catching on, because you see what that they want something like that, an executive president. People don't understand that. Can remember, most people think that a lot of Jamaicans are living abroad, right? Now we live vicariously through people who live in the United States. So we don't know what life is like in the United States or the governance of the United States. We don't know. People who live outside in Jamaica, them only hear tidbits. You have to live there to understand what is happening. Yeah. But when UIC, I'm not dumping anything.
No. I looked for it a while ago and I put it up there. So talk about it. That's it. That's what they say. Go ahead and talk about it. Yeah.
What they're coming with is something foreign to what Jamaicans know and used to, and they can't compute it or comprehend. I'm talking even educated people. They don't know what you're coming with. People are saying, but this don't make no sense. That's what they're saying to themselves, and that's why you don't see UIC catching on as they would want it to happen. Because people just as O'Neil said, the guy said, boy, I mean, just stick to what I know, yeah, man.
60, Wow, that's very interesting. Well, today has been an opening and eye-opening on the day of the coronation, and I guess there's more conversation going to be had. But one of the things which I clearly I've been seeing, and what people are saying is that we're not ready as yet, and people are saying there need to be more education. And it seems like the education which we're talking about is education of what we have now, and then education as to what it could be. And then the point that was made today is that the power which is invested presently in the government or in the prime minister, let it go. Nobody will let it go. So they will keep the ceremonial.
Yeah, and Silver, one other thing to think about too. There are countries that we see as examples. For example, we talk about Switzerland, we talk about Singapore. Singapore has a similar structure like Jamaica, right? Yeah. We looked up Singapore a lot in terms of their governance, etc., etc. But they have gone through and put in the right governance structures in place, right? So I do believe that there are countries out there that are blueprint that are currently has a ceremonial president that we could look to. Singapore is one, right? Switzerland is another one, right? So there are things that we could do. Ensure, to Lester's point, that we have proper governance in how we select our candidates. How do we ensure that a permanent secretary can't be permanent and can't be removed, etc. So I think it's worth having those discussions. But the last thing I'll say is, I would press the current committee to ensure that they're educating the Jamaican public around what this means for them. Yes. And if you're going to go that ceremonial road, just say, this is the road we're going to go down, and it's a very, sort of optics, because we want to get rid of the king and everything within Jamaica.
And it was alluded as well so far based on
the last thing I want to say on this topic, last short thing. You see, I don't know about the United Kingdom, but like in America, everybody has to file taxes, right, O'Neil?
Everybody, yep. You have to pay both state and federal taxes.
Exactly. No, so even if you don't have an income, you file zero taxes, right?
You file taxes, even if you don't.
Yeah. Now, are we going to adapt that aspect also? Would that model work in Jamaica? Because, okay, and I was saying to somebody last time from the US, I said, let us take
But sorry, but you wouldn't, because Jamaica have a GCT, we don't, and like the UK, they have a VAT. So that's the big difference.
No, yeah, but remember, you're changing everything.
Oh, so you're saying that as part of it is the taxation system too?
Exactly. Because guess what happened now? You have somebody who, like a female that dances in particular clubs, right? So she is not employed to the club per se as a employer.
She's a freelancer.
Right? An employee.
It's a freelancer.
But she has no type of paperwork to connect her to that institution. So
She's
there's
a
no,
sole trader. Yeah. Go on, Tom.
but with Statin or the under her title would be unemployed,
Not an
right?
entrepreneur. Is she not
Her
an entrepreneur?
No, I'm saying she would be registered in the system as unemployed.
Okay. So therefore, the hustlers. Then what you're trying to say?
Like the
Lot of hustlers.
higglers and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Well, the ICIs are registered,
ICIs.
are
Okay.
Yes.
registered. But what about the handcart man? So you have handcart men who like I would make handcarts and rent them out, and I can make upwards of maybe like 30,000 to 40,000 dollars a day.
Mm.
You know. What about the loader man, them, the conductor? There's so many the informal sector is so big. Are you going to then have all these wall up these people into formal sector?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it is. I'm
So
saying
you're saying,
it's
listen,
not difficult.
there's greater implication than just this, and that's, I think, the theme here is that, right?
Exactly.
It's much more complicated than the eye meets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very.
Well, guys, let me just quickly go on to this last topic here. I think the MP and the minister in this case missed a trick, or we could have diffused the whole thing. But people are talking about it, and I posted a video, just the beer video, on my TikTok, and it's now near to 35K, 35,000 people talking about this video. And this is where a minister was seen to be having an oral altercation with another member of the public who is deemed to be an opposition caretaker. Unless I can even break that down a bit further. But let me just play this just a bit here for person's interest.
Front of you tour with the parish council.
So I am following.
No, you don't follow my tour. I'm a tour with, you see, it's a political tour.
Right, and it's
Caretaker
a government,
that-
so I want to know what is
Caretaker
happening.
not recognize. Hold on. Caretaker
I
not
am a
recognize
citizen
constitution.
of Jamaica.
But
I
I want
want
to
to know
see
what
what
is
we
happening.
You hear me? Caretakers are not recognized in the constitution of Jamaica.
I don't know about caretaker. I'm a citizen of this country.
Well, me never.
and I have interest in this
Keep your interest
area.
to yourself
No,
and your yard.
no,
Don't
may I
come on my
share my
tour.
interest.
Don't come on my tour.
May I share my interest?
I don't need you here.
Eh?
I'm here with the member of parliament. That's enough.
Well, I am here.
This is a consult me.
I am
Me
here.
not tour with consult with him. Tour with the mayor.
I am here.
All right, tour with the mayor.
I am here.
So wait, who invited you?
I am a citizen of this
Only
country.
Ching, Daffy and Sly when you invite you.
Well, guess what? You know who you invite. So if you invite me as well, you invite me.
Ching, Daffy and Sly when you invite you. I don't tour with consult.
I can't hear you.
Sorry. Yeah, somebody just said a while ago that is the Donald Trump of Jamaican politics.
Yeah, I think, I would say this. We need to stop use that as an excuse. Here's what I saw, right? And I chatted a little bit about it, and obviously there's a clip, right?
Yes.
Any politician, any person who's serving the public, when you win a constituency in Jamaica, right? Yes, you might get a PMP seat or a JLP seat. Once you get that title, you're a member of parliament for that entire constituency. And I think this gentleman, who I don't know who he is, missed an opportunity of showing a united front. And I remember when Andrew came back from some country and the whole issue of corruption came in and what was going on. He used it as a teaching moment. He said, look, we have a long way to go. And I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
And he said, look, we have to take this opportunity to fix the governance of this process. And I welcome the opposition to join me. This guy, whoever this guy is, if you're there and you're touring with the member of parliament, right? This is something to show grace and leadership to say, yes, come with us. Vice is, the bit that we're hearing him saying, who invites you, etc., etc. Right? I don't tour with other people. Right? It just unbecoming of a public official, either party. Right? To me, this is where, if I was the prime minister, I would come out and say, we don't condone this type of behavior. And you could see the member of parliament actually walk away, and continue her walk, because I don't know, but it seems to me we've gotten to the point where this divisiveness in politics is taking over. There's lack of leadership. There's lack of grace among our citizens, and I wish we will take these moments to show that we are beyond politics at time. And to me, that's a shameful display of leadership.
Let's say your take.
Thank you.
The backstory. Go on.
All right. You all know, persons who watch this platform know what party I am leaning towards.
I have no idea. I thought it was a king platform.
I thought it was a king platform.
I thought you were leaning towards a king. King Charles.
Anyway, but the gentleman who was speaking was Minister of Labour, I think, Everett Warmington, right? He's the member of parliament for Southeast St. Catherine. All right. And he was standing beside MP Anne-Marie Vaz. The gentleman who he was addressing is Mr. Collins, aka Shaka Fame, right? The gentleman I know personally also. That happened in Portland. The gentleman is an aspirant, not a caretaker, as he said. He's an aspirant for the People's National Party for the Ferial Division.
Okay.
This gentleman, since 2017 or 2018, has been publicly, privately, he has a radio show in the radio station in Portland that he has. And he has chastised, disrespect, disrupt meetings and said disparaging things about Anne-Marie Vaz since 2018. Now, before I continue, it is unfortunate, and I don't agree with certain terminologies that Everett Warmington, the minister, used, right? Don't agree with it, right? Especially if you see cameras there and stuff like that, you have to behave accordingly. You have to behave, in a particular manner. Now, people in Jamaica know Everett Warmington, and if you say certain things, you will trigger him and he will respond in a particular way, right? For the most part, because he has had outbursts like this before, for the most part, he is reacting. He's not somebody who goes and sees something or somebody and start cuss them. If you come to him and say something to him, right, and he finds it disrespectful or disparaging or not favorable, he'll respond in a particular fashion, right? Now, this gentleman was told, and this is what I was told by persons who were there, right, that he and the MP don't speak, He and the MP don't speak. And so her walking off is not in context to Everett Warmington's comments. Is that she don't want to be in the presence of that gentleman who said that he wants to be on the tour, right? Now, the culture in Portland, if the PMP comes there and they're touring and stuff like that, and whatever they're doing, the JLP people, they give them their space. They don't go and say, I want to see what's happening. I'm a citizen, whatever, right? What is happening is the intentions of, there 2 weeks ago, there have been 3 or 4 roadblocks in Portland. That same gentleman instigated them. He had trucks putting out river stones on the road, blocking the road, Black Hill, all these places. He oiled the road this week gone. He oiled some roads in Ferry Hill, right? Yeah. So letting vehicles slide off the road and stuff like that. These are the things, the antagonistic things that he has done. So even the death of the former PMP MP for Portland that died. I'm
I forget his
2018,
name. Yeah.
right? I still remember his name, right? This man went on radio and said that it's Anne Marie Vaz and Daryl Vaz killed the man. So these are some of the things that you see. So it's a long thing coming up. Warmington know who this gentleman is, so that's why that's his reaction. But Mr. Warmington was giving us a presentation, and he kept interrupting. He kept asking things. That's why he first said this is not a political tour.
He said this is not.
Yeah, he
He
said
said
this is not a political tour
it's
because
not.
because out of everybody in the parliament, Mr. Warmington knows the constitution. Trust me, he knows the constitution. So he's telling him this is not a political tour, this is not a GLP tour. I'm here at the capacity as the minister. Right? So the road work was done and we are touring. This is a touring party. You're not invited to the touring party. Now, as a citizen, he is free to walk along the roadway. Just don't come with the party. And the minister has a right to it.
And that is because of the history and because he's not a part of the close network as well, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, if he was a more welcoming opposition person, Mrs. Vaz would be the first one to hold him hand and say, "Come." But and she would have extended an invitation to him also, right?
Okay.
But they do not speak at all. So I'm
Okay.
saying there's a context behind all of this. No, I am not agreeing with a public official disrespecting anybody.
But here's the
But
thing:
the
regardless,
context of why it has happened.
regardless of the context of it, regardless of what happened, which if someone watching it, they wouldn't know. To me, it's the behavior, right? There's certain, and I said it to Silver before. If you remember, sort of Lester, back in the day when you see a teacher, a doctor, the teacher was always proper. Even the market, them always speak a certain way. They behave a certain way. I remember back in the day, you would never see a member of parliament without them suit on, even walking on the street, right? Because there's certain behavior. And I think regardless, there's a saying, and I think Michelle Obama said it, when they go low, we go high. And in this case, he should have been a better leader, irregardless of what this person is saying. Is you are a leader, you have to have thick skin, right, as a leader. So I don't want to be apologetic and set context for this behavior. Irregardless, this behavior should not happen at all for our public officials, right? We should not, irregardless. He should go high because he's not a representation of him. He's a representation of the people, Jamaica, and the party for which he's a member of. So he has to realize that.
And the other thing about it as well, and I always try to use a comparison, and I use a comparison of the UK. If something of this nature took place, whether one knows the backstory or not, that MP would have been sacked by the end of the day, right? The press would have been at his door, the press would have been at his workplace because of the fact that, and let's say you said it, the cameras and everything is going. That's what they're actually seeing. They're not going to see the backstory or anything like that. It would be a government minister who is being paid by the citizen or MP or a public official cussing off a member of the public without the backstory. And as you said, O'Neill, when Andrew came back at the time when he was being berated, he pulled out. I think he said, "I'm a seasoned person." But he said, but he did a master stroke, and a master stroke was put his hands up and just say, "Let's see what we can learn from this." And Andrew Warmington, Warmington should in future in situation like this just keep your mouth. I said, all right, come walk with me or something like that. Bring your enemies closer.
No,
if anything.
Parry Williams said, I must have apologizing for the disgusting politicians. I'm not being apologetic. I was giving context to why it went there, right?
Yeah.
So I am not apologizing. I'm just giving context to why he would react in this fashion, right? Now, the MP, what I'm saying, the MP, if this person was somebody who was closer to her as a PMP person, knowing Anne Marie Vaz, having spoken to Anne Marie Vaz, right? She would have stepped in and she would have diffused it. She would have said, "No, man, it's all right," and she would have said, "Come." So from she doesn't know, she walk away, right?
So it's
She has
because of the
she,
history there.
because of the history between them, you know.
Yeah,
So
but
I but
government.
I agree. I agree. You know, I am saying, you know, on you, right? He should not have said these things that he said.
Yeah,
He should not.
and I think that's the thing, right? There's like, and someone mentioned, and I said it to Silver, is that the politics has become so divisive, and over the last 15 years in the U.S. and now we're seeing that in Jamaica. We saw that in the parliament where there's the member of parliament tells someone else to shut up because there was a debate and whatever. So we're seeing this type of behavior, and I wish the prime minister would take this as an opportunity to remind his members that you're a servant of the public and you should act accordingly when you're in public.
Yes, that is so crucial, and and even some key leaders, because there's a guy in Belize, which one was sort of, yeah, when one was looking at these guys and realizing that there are some good leaders which are coming up in the world at the same time.
Yeah, I tell people, Shine Barrows, the opposition leader in Belize, watch him. He has that Obama has. He has that manly sort of, and this guy has a story. One of the most powerful story that a lot of people don't talk, and if you have kids, talk about his story, because is someone that has transformed himself from prison to now a politician to a statesman. If you just listen to how he speaks, right? Shine, I think, is one of those politicians. He's young, he's vibrant, he's well connected, and he's using that platform. And I'll tell people, pay attention to this guy, because this guy is going to be a world leader as he continue to hone his skill.
But O'Neill, I thought you were going to go way back. Shines was a rapper.
Yeah, I said he has a, yeah.
So and he was a bad boy. You understand me? So he was no joke. A lot of guys on the street and in the industry feared Shines. And he took the rap for Puff Daddy with the shooting in the club. And he was deported, I think, back to Belize.
Yep.
And then he transformed his life totally. And the only reason why he was allowed back into the US because he has a diplomatic passport now.
But now he's embraced. Now, the thing I'm saying is that, use his story, because here's a guy that spent 10 years in prison.
Yeah.
Came back out, transformed himself into a statesman. And if you just hear him speak, I just love to hear his speeches. He was in, I think, St. Lucia. He was giving a speech.
Yep.
He's one person. He reminded me of Micah Manley. He reminded me of Obama. When he speaks, he has this voice that is just very smoothing. So I'm saying, if we think about leaders and upcoming leaders, he's one of them that we should watch and we should tell our kids about him.
What about the Venezuelan guy, that Venezuelan opposition leader?
I don't know where he's, Guaido or
yeah.
I haven't followed him at all in years, but I think within our hemisphere, Minister Shine Bowers is probably one of our best upcoming new leader. He reminded me of Andrew when Andrew was starting out on his journey.
Yeah.
But
Actually, go on, listen. Yeah.
Also, Shines is ramping up the tourism sector. So all
Indeed.
the territories in our region that do tourism, if we don't transfer what we're doing, Belize is going to be the number one place in the region very, very soon, because he's pouring in, he's getting investors in, he's doing a whole lot, believe me. You know,
He's
so we
using his connection to all the rappers. He's using his connection to DJ
Yeah.
Khaled, to Puffy. Everybody is going to Belize, and he's using.
stuff like that. Telling about the cheap, the affordability of lands and property in Belize, and you know what you can get, and the easy to do business there, and the access to whole Latin America market. He is doing a lot, believe me. You know,
Yeah.
so we have to,
And the thing that I always say, Lester, is this: how come we don't hear more about his story? Because his story is so inspirational. Here you have a black man that went to prison, transformed his life, and now could be the prime minister of a country.
There's something we Lester, we didn't do, and Anil, you also said it a while ago. You mentioned it. Why we don't hear about these guys? Well, we have heard about him, and we're going to push it. We're going to talk about it. Lester, we also spoke the other night about finding some black inventions to start talk about these things as well. Inventions by black people that we need to start to showcase.
Yep.
Lester, you're saying this, yeah.
Yeah, no, I am saying that it is not sexy on you.
Yeah.
To highlight, I mean, about a black man changing his life like that, it's not sexy to the media, and even to black media, it's not sexy.
Yes.
What we have to do with new media now is highlight these people, not just shines, but persons like him who are making transformational moves in the region, in our country, in our diaspora. I have been engaging with some persons in the United States, and O'Neill, you may know this more than me. It is surprising to know the amount of Jamaicans who are doing exceptionally well in the United States and in Canada. Tons of them. It's not like a small amount. A lot of them have positions in government. A lot of them have position in a corporate Jamaica, high up and stuff, like business owners. And I'm saying, why aren't we getting these talent to invest in Jamaica? What is it? What? And then when I speak to certain person, they say, listen, if we want to ship stuff to Jamaica, right, like machinery or a container, so he said that they said that the process, and they had a meeting with the prime minister, and he's like, the process is a process, and that to them was like a spirit killer. So we have to look at, say, we have talent, money, expertise in the diaspora, and it is being used in the diaspora, benefiting the country that they're living in, and not benefiting Jamaica.
I think, just go back to, you're right, Lester, just go back to sort of what I call black excellence, right? And this is where we have to do a better job in highlighting each other, right?
Yeah.
The point we just made, if someone is doing well, right, you hear about, for example, there's a lot of blacks are doing well in artificial intelligence. You don't hear about it, but it's going to transform our lives, right? And you recall when Sterling scored that goal for England back in, I think it was the European Cup, right?
Yeah.
They didn't put him on the front page, right? They put someone else. So we, meaning within our communities, we have to talk about black excellence. We have to stop, get into this whole historical, which is another day we could talk about it. But how do we showcase the engineers? How do we showcase the scientists, the doctors, the lawyers, the entrepreneurs? How do we ensure that it's not just, we are thugs, etc., right? We have to get back to that where we have black excellence. Remember, the stoplight that everybody uses was discovered and invented by a black man. Right?
I was listening to Isaac Buchanan the other day, I didn't know he was in prison or he was
Yes,
deported.
yes.
But he came back to Jamaica, built up himself, top lawyer, and going to the Privy Council as well. He's got a story as well.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm trying to say? But he also said that his same colleagues will sometimes try to put him down by calling him deportee.
Yes.
Same colleagues.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
It's yeah. We have to start pushing. And Silver, you done this. I think you had this thing going.
Black
and
excellence.
Black excellence.
Yes,
I think we should encourage, and I would encourage Shine, Minister Shine. He has to tell his story, and I think his biopic and his book is coming out soon, right?
Yeah.
But I think he should tell his story because I think, showing Black excellence and showing that, hey, you could rise out of the ashes and you could transform your life. And tell that story. I think it's going to be an inspirational one.
And you know what? A lot of guys, even like Nathaniel Pete, guys who go into prison and reach out to lots of young men in prison as well, showing them these stories. Lester, showing them the backstory of the person actually, which is there, and it can be a motivational, inspirational element as well. But anyway, guys, listen, it's a great night tonight. I'm not going to stay long. But,
Hail the king! Hail the king!
Let's say, you guys are going to hail the king?
No, we in the Netherlands have our own king, right? We just like a king,
That tier 3 king. We don't talk about them king.
I was looking at some of the countries, and somebody just posted a while ago. These are the countries that King Charles is the head state of the following: United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Jamaica, Bahamas, Grenada, Saint Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Antigua and Barbados, St. Vincent and Grenadines, Solomon Island, Talava, and Belize. And I believe that
Ghana too?
Huh?
He's not the king of Ghana. Ghana is not in the Commonwealth?
No, Ghana.
No,
Not Ghana.
There's a king of Ghana was at the coronation. There's a king of Ghana was at the coronation. But I understand that two countries which are pushing for the republic status, Australia and also Grenada.
Yeah, and then Belize have mentioned it. Antigua has mentioned that they want to explore. Obviously, Barbados has done that. The Bahamas, but I think it's one of those things where we talk about, right? What do you want to put your energy in?
Yes, and I think that a lot of people will be sensitizing it, and they'll be watching Jamaica as well. Just like how Jamaica, I believe, was watching Barbados to a certain extent. So
Hail the king. Charles, you're now the king. Let's see, tomorrow when you get up, what are you gonna do? And it'd be interesting to see what legacy you're gonna leave. Your mother, the queen, has a great legacy.
Yeah.
Now, what's your legacy?
Somebody said that when the same archbishop, the same one who did the service today, when the queen died and they were going to put her down in the ground, she was completely stripped of all the gold and all those sort of things, all the crowns. And the person said when she went down, they said Elizabeth, not the Queen, Elizabeth, stripped. And then when Charles was going to become a king, they put these barriers up, and then they strip him, and he was done into some outfit there, and then they put on the robe, some symbolic thing. And I think the point somebody was saying is that naked you come in, naked you go. I mean, to say at the end of the day, you won't be able to take anything with you. At the end of the day,
exactly, because if you think of it, I saw something Silverborn where someone was saying in a graveyard, here's a former king, but there's nothing. They're all in the same ground. So I would say, naked you come, naked you go.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the thing that at the end of it, humanity stands.
Yes.
Right. The one thing that is sure for everyone is the ultimate, which is death. And that's why we should treat each other with grace and kindness.
And that is ashes to ashes and dust to dust. But guys, here's something. I gotta show this one. Because we say we want a better, this is it. We want the right
republic. But before then get the right republic, me want to get me sir. So
Yeah.
Sir, if you could advocate on my behalf to get sir.
Yeah.
Love that.
There are t-shirts. You can go onto my website, get the t-shirts there. There we are. Walk and talk motivational moments. The shirts there, as well. And there's more actually to a certain extent. There's much more to, you know. So let's get this one going as well. All right. Well, guys, listen. All the best. Let's go. Take care. Those on Facebook. Hail to the king, and hail to everybody as well. D and guys, I'm like
big up my wife.
Vita is here. Is she here?
Vita's always watching, but no
Vita's
worries.
She's not watching Lester. She's watching you to make sure you behave. So let's clarify that point there.
All right, good one.
All right, okay then. Take care of yourself. Lester, big up. Boom. Thank you so much, O'Neill and Lester and D. Same guy in Toronto. If the sessional camp promises wholesale change certain trade barriers, importation, I would have persuaded to go that route. Blessed team. So thank you guys. And it's a long night. And we'll see you around next time around. That's next week, Saturday. And the most important day, and Saturday night as well, and Thursday night. M.A. Ramsey, big up, peace out, see you around. Boom. Let's go.